so let's start out with you. So you said you work for the Index?
Yeah, I do. I'm a writer right now. I used to be an editor,
Uh-huh.
and then managing editor, so which means I worked with all the sections and all the platforms, and then I'll be an editor again next semester.
Very
Yeah.
cool. And what's your major at Truman and like what do
Yeah,
you
I'm a
study?
double major in communication and English, so I just do a lot
Okay.
of writing. That's what I
Very
tell
cool.
family. I'm like a writing major.
That's awesome. Do you do like a lot of reading in English here? Is
Uh-huh.
it a lot kind of like high school English where you like read a lot of novels or is it mostly like writing your own or what's kind of the difference between like
Yeah.
communication and English?
Communication is more the study of how we as like a society communicate about like what's going on currently. With English, I do a pretty good mix of writing and reading, but mostly the reading is more. I do a lot more nonfiction based reading
Okay.
than most of my counterparts do, because that's what I want to do. I want to go to grad school for nonfiction writing.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm really excited. So a lot of what I do is reading, like memoirs or
Yeah.
accounts of like current events or things that happened, and like different people's interpretations of it. So it's a bit more like artistically laid out journalism, if that makes sense.
Very cool. Yeah. That's really awesome. So I'm sure like the Index is really cool, like
Yeah,
being part of that.
it all kind of connects eventually.
Awesome. Okay, so I'll jump into our questions about I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. So when did you first read I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings?
It would have been a long time ago. I would have been in middle school
Wow.
because my sister was reading it for her, so I would have been in eighth grade probably. So it's been a long time, but I remember of the books that she read for that class. I really enjoyed that one.
Great. So yeah, like what did you think of the book? So you said you liked it, but what?
Yeah. So other than Huckleberry Finn, it was probably one of the first books that I ever read that had to do with race relations in
Yeah.
the South. And I know shortly after I read I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, then I read To Kill a Mockingbird,
Oh, okay.
and then again in high school. But I really liked it because I think I don't know, it just shows you a different perspective of like struggle,
Yeah.
and like the struggle to survive, but also from like a coming of age kind of
Right.
viewpoint, which
Right.
especially in middle school, like everyone goes
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of nice to see that. She struggles a lot with body image and
Yeah.
self-perception, and how for her is how race relations kind of really highlighted that. But I think everyone kind of goes through that, especially as a young girl. So I kind of was able to identify with that, and because there was some of that identification, I don't know, that was just like a special story.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. That was one of my questions. Like, are there any parts you identify with? Because I know that a lot of the story, like, I couldn't identify with a lot of it. Being in
Yeah.
rural Arkansas, in a really like segregated time, and like all of the
Yeah.
different like later the like sexual abuse and like the teen pregnancy and all of these things. Like a lot I couldn't relate to, but I think that's really neat that like there's still parts of her life that you can
Yeah.
relate to.
And that's what I love about Maya Angelou. I actually read more of her poetry than
Yeah.
anything else. But it's just, it's so personal,
Yeah.
And that can be really difficult to read, like really
Yeah.
personal things like that.
Yeah.
So for me, the book reading it was difficult at the time
Yeah.
because of how,
Especially in eighth grade.
yeah, especially I didn't understand a lot of what was going on in the book
Right.
when I was in eighth grade, like the sexual assault and stuff like that.
Right.
Like when I went back and was thinking about that the other day after you talked about this, I was like, oh wow, I was too young to read that.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe not. But so for me, it was definitely, I approached it from much more of like a coming of age kind of story, and like becoming comfortable with who you are. I'm proud of who you are too.
Right.
That's probably something I still struggle with.
Yeah.
But she does a really great job in that story about talking about how she does that and how hard it was because of her personal situation.
Right. In addition to just coming of age, all of these factors.
Yeah, she has so many other things. And I think that was something that, I don't know, I can feel grateful that when I went through like puberty and the awkwardness of everything, like I didn't have any of those extra struggles. Like I have a great like system of support, like woman-wise, with my sisters and my mother. So
yeah, that's crazy. So you read the book in middle school. What do you think about high school students? Do you think that this should be like a required reading, or just recommended, or like maybe an AP level, or what do you think, like age-wise, that this book would fit, or if it should be taught?
Yeah, I definitely think it should be taught, and probably high school is the best age for it, I would think. I'm actually a little surprised that it's not on a required reading.
Yeah.
In fact, I've never had Maya Angelou on any required
Yeah.
reading list.
Neither have I.
But like she's hailed as like one of the greatest
Right.
writers. She's like a Greek, so I don't know why she isn't on there. And it was surprising to me that some of our English professors or English teachers hadn't read it. Yeah. So I don't know why it's not, but I definitely think it should be.
Yeah. I agree. So the topics in the book. So besides just this book itself, what do you think about topics like racism being taught? Like, do you think it's important that high school curriculums have novels that kind of dive deeper into the idea of racism or issues like that?
Absolutely. That's like a really critical part of our history as a country, and I think that approaching it from a teaching standpoint purely from like the historical aspect leaves a lot lacking. We can like argue and stuff about how well history books do at teaching, the bad parts of our history. But what novels do, especially nonfiction novels like this, is they put a face to it and they put emotion behind it. That's why I love nonfiction writing. That's why I love telling, like stories through journalism.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're just so real and so like poignant, and
right.
It's hard to deny that something like that happened when
it's a personal account.
It's a personal account. You have someone who's literally telling you like, this happened to me, like this is my experience.
Right.
And I think teaching it to students who are about to like enter society as like
right.
either a working adult or go on and participate in like an academic field, like they should have that experience.
Right.
So that's why I think it's important.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I thought was really neat about how this book has been challenged so much is it's a real account of her life, just like it's almost like telling her that like your life is too inappropriate to share. That's one thing that really shocked me when I realized how like the scope of how many times this book has been challenged within like high schools or people have tried to like get it off shelves because it is a true account of her life.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people don't want to hear things that make them uncomfortable, and they can't really voice why it's making them uncomfortable.
Right.
So labeling it as appropriate for people that age is a way to make it go away, kind of
an excuse to not have to deal with the content.
Yeah, and maybe there are like topics I think that should be limited to certain ages, but like high school, like you should be having sex ed, you should be having these conversations.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing should be too shocking to talk about.
Yeah. That kind of leads into another question. So one of the biggest reasons this novel has been challenged is because of the scene where she is raped. Do you think that scene is necessary in the novel? Because I know that's one thing that a lot of parents have really pointed to, that this is the reason I want this book gone. But what do you feel that its weight is within the book?
From a writing perspective, like as a writer, that's a really crucial part of the story. It's like a turning point kind of thing in her identification as a woman. Kind of messed up a lot of that progress and that evolution as a person that she had, and also plays like a huge role in how she related to sex and affection and love later on. And I think that in order for her to understand why she felt that way later on, and for us to understand that, we needed to know that happened to her.
Right.
And even just like the catharsis of like being able to tell the truth, because a large part of that was when she was in court and she had to lie, and that was really hard. Like when you're young and you're developing your ethics and your morals, like
and she said something along the lines of like, my voice killed him, because she told her family who it was, and then he ended up dead, and they couldn't really like pinpoint who it was, but it was probably family members who killed that man. So
I think it was so important for her to finally be able to tell the truth. And to like tell what happened and know that like people are going to hear it, and that catharsis is really important. I think it's just as important that Maya Angelou be able to tell her story as it is that someone hears it.
Right.
I think sometimes we negate like the importance of like the personal side, like just telling you.
Right. So not only should that be included, but that's a reason people should read the book.
Yeah.
Just realizing what other people can go through.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Kind of a similar question. Another section of the book that has been a reason of challenges is at the end of the book when Maya becomes pregnant. Do you feel, I know that this sounds kind of silly saying, but do you feel that issues like teen pregnancy, violence, sexual content makes readers more susceptible to those issues themselves? Because I know that's been kind of a reason that people have wanted to challenge the book, or, like, don't expose my kids to that, they might do drugs, or they might do this. But what's your opinion on, like, children being exposed to these types of things in novels?
Yeah, I don't think it makes them at more of a risk.
Yeah.
Like if anything, you could actually argue the opposite.
Yeah.
That Maya's experience was like even just reading it as a younger child, I was like, well, this doesn't feel like how it should happen,
Yeah.
Like
You can still tell something's wrong.
yeah, like the confusion she felt and the way she approached it, like so, disjointedly.
Right.
You're like, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't
Yeah.
seem right. And even there, like it comes to like a kind of a good end, where she's
Yeah.
able to like connect and understand instinctually, like she's a mother.
Right.
Everything, like the way she got to that point, like I
Yeah.
think it makes you as a reader uncomfortable and sad, like really
Yeah.
sad. So I think letting students hear that
hmm
from someone who went through it, who's not saying don't do this or don't do that, but
Just an honest kind of, this is what happened. This is what I
happened
did.
to me.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what was happening. I was affected by this thing that happened to me when I was a child.
Yeah.
And like my parents were supportive, but it still was confusing and strange. I think it's important for people to hear that, and I think that could be maybe like one of the best ways to educate people about what can happen when you're not safe or
Yeah.
things like that. So
Exactly. So maybe this should be required just for different education, for
Yeah.
sex education and different things. This novel.
Yeah, and I've never been in a situation where like educating myself more put me at risk.
Right.
So I don't think
Kind of a silly argument.
yeah. Especially considering the age of the people, like high school age,
Right.
where like you're coming into that world, you have to go through sex education anyway.
Right.
So having like a real life example of like what can go wrong when you approach it from a really like just discombobulated mindset.
Right.
Really good for students, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Let me see. I think we've gone through a lot of these. That's awesome. So one thing that I think is this novel is just really inspiring on its own. Just all of the like challenges that Maya overcame and faced and had to just come up against to just grow up. But to me, what's even more remarkable than that is after the setting of this novel, all the things that Maya accomplishes. So given such a turbulent childhood that she goes on to become a single mother, a singer, an actress, a poet, and that she inspired people like Oprah and like the Clintons. And I think that's really remarkable given this novel because to me, it doesn't really point to things like that. It sounds like a really rough childhood.
Yeah.
It could be really hard to overcome.
Yeah. That's why I can't remember which character it's either her stepfather or one of her uncles that consistently tells her, like, don't worry about how you look, think about how smart you are and like how hard you work and things like that. And I watched a TED Talk a couple years ago. I love TED Talks. So
Yeah.
TED Talks I watched all the time. Such a nerd. I watched a TED Talk about how we praise children. And what he was talking about was you should always, whenever you praise a child, and you should definitely always praise children for the work that they do, but you should talk about, how hard they worked and, like the process that it took for them to like get from point A to point B.
Right.
Rather than telling them, oh, you're so smart, like you did such a good job because you're so smart, that kind of thing.
Right.
Because that can lead to like a warped sense of what hard work means,
Right.
that kind of thing. And that's partly how I was raised, like the value in hard work. It's just like part of my identification from my family. So I loved that in the story she was talking a lot about like the things she was reading.
Yeah.
How there wasn't any female, heroines and things like that, and it always seems like women were never the heroes of the story.
Yeah.
So I loved that she had someone in her life, whether it was like her brother standing up for her when she was younger, or her uncle. I'm pretty sure it was her uncle.
Her grandma, who was always like a really big figure in her life. Powerful woman.
Those
those
powerful figures. And even though like those bad things happened to her, like she chose to emulate her life after those figures who told her that she could be powerful, she could be the hero, she could be strong and smart, independent. So I love that.
Yeah.
She took like all the good parts that were kind of buried in that whole mess of her childhood and made something of herself. And that's really inspiring.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool, especially if someone were to go teach this novel or in the context of a classroom, to focus on the events that happened, but also the scope of her life and all the things she was able to accomplish, because that really puts this into perspective. That, you know, kind of no matter where you come from, things you've had to face, like you can be great, and you are, you know, if you really just work hard into it.
Absolutely. Through the index and some like private projects I've been doing on research, I've been doing a lot of research on mental health situations and things like that. And I think, you know, talking about that with a younger group who is going through like an emotionally turbulent time, like high schoolers, even middle schoolers, could be really impactful to talk about. Like everyone goes through dark periods in their life. And I think at some point, like it's either, you know, like you learn to see the beauty in those really dark moments and grow from it, or you get just absolutely buried. And that can be like a time when you don't know how to see the way out, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, she came out of it, you know, just absolutely wonderful. So wrote absolutely gorgeous poetry. So
What are some of your? So you said you have read some of her other poetry. What are some of your favorites? Like favorite themes, or like just things about them that have like stuck out to you?
So Why the Caged Bird Sings is actually, she has a poem with that title as well, and that's probably one of my favorite ones. Because I don't know, at the end of it, I'm always wondering about the title. You know, like I know why the caged bird sings.
Right.
I just think, like, does she know because she went through a struggle, or is it like secret like thing inside of her that like what keeps her going? Like talking about, you know, like how she came out of it like so beautiful and strong. Like I always think that there's something like secret inside herself. Like she's, you know, held
the caged bird is almost like driving her.
Yeah, and I don't know. It always makes me wonder at the end of the poem, like, what is it? What strength do you have inside of you? And can I have some, please?
Yeah.
So yeah, I just really love it.
So kind of to wrap up, would you recommend this book to a friend?
Oh yes, absolutely. I definitely would. I love it. I think in every story there's something that you can learn if you look for it. So even though, you know, like I'm a white woman from a middle class family in the Midwest, like I still got something out of it. And it taught me a little bit more about like this whole other side of, you know, our history and our world that I didn't really think about to that point. So yeah, definitely would.
It would be a great eye opener.